Welcome, initiates. Today's Akashic word is cosmology, the study of the cosmos. What's the cosmos? That's a Greek word for harmony, order, or the world. And it essentially points out what scientists do not tell you, which is the entire universe is in perfect harmony. No, in a matter of fact, today I'm going to rant and rave about the basically gross oxymoron of science. Because there is no settled science. The only settled science there is that there is no settled science. Every single theory is simply speculation. Speculation indicates that it's made upon what you can see. Remember, scientists don't even use two eyes when they see. They use one eye, and it's also colorblind. They're also deaf, and they're also dumb. They don't listen to anything. They don't speak or converse with anything. They don't learn the language of anything that they're trying to supposedly understand. And they have continued in the same frame of mind as when the male priests took over the temples, which were controlled by women before that, and used science, in other words, magical little devices that they understood the mystery of, and they claimed that it was divine and that only the men in the temple could understand and teach it to you. And by the way, you can't understand it, folks. So anything science tells you, you have to believe because they used math to prove it. Let's remember that the integral system that we use is one of thousands of mathematical systems, and it is incorrect, and it has gross errors in terms of its levels of tolerance. We know that by the fact that when we send a satellite out, we miss the mark every single time. Why? We don't know the way the planets move. As a matter of fact, when we're talking about the cosmos, I'm going to jump off today a little bit and talk, before I get into this cosmology of Rudolf Steiner and the real cosmology of beings, not forces. Science only believes in forces. Why? Because they were basically born out of what? Science was born out of war. Most inventions in the past, 100 years ago or before, were usually invented directly for war, oftentimes for ships on the ocean. And that's where most innovation came from, believe it or not. So it is war, it is aggression, and it is the scientists, mostly male scientists, and male priests even in the ancient past, they want to control the knowledge. And they don't think that we, the common people, can understand the knowledge. Therefore, they will give you mathematical descriptions of what they say they're doing. For instance, at CERN, they say they've discovered the God particle. They say they've discovered this particle, that particle. No, they haven't. All of those things have been disproven by anyone who doesn't work at CERN. All it is a computer readout of mathematical garbage. That's what science gives us, mathematical garbage. And they change their scientific theories as soon as somebody else notices, looks at, and discovers what was always going on there, and then they think it's new. It's not new. We are, in fact, folks, let's just get right to the meat of the subject, because we've discussed this before in our Akashic presentation on cosmogenesis. And we pointed out that there's no cosmogenesis without anthropogenesis. Without a human being being able to observe the cosmos, there is no cosmos. And so what we have here is nothing more than what science has pointed out, that the quantum reality is whatever you look at, you change it by the fact that you're perceiving it. Now, that's one of the few things they have demonstrated, because they've shown that light is a particle and a wave, depending upon who's looking at it and what it is they're looking for. So this is all we're talking about. We're talking about silly human kindergarten theories that then become a science that is a new religion that you must believe because it's settled science and because it has math to back it up. Well, here's the real math. This is called the Mandelbrot set. Okay, if you can see that. And what it is, oh, look at it. It's a human being sitting in lotus. Here's the feet, here's the knees, here's the shoulders, here's the head, here's the crown chakra, and here is the chakras they talk about above them. In it, you see there are 7 foci, 7 focal points. And as you work with, this is a mathematical two-dimensional more or less a theory, but they try to use it to describe the systems of mathematics, integers, in comparison to geometry. But this is two-dimensional. But the 7 foci are what? The sun and the 6 planets. And what are these? These are the human chakras. It's very evident to anyone who has paid any attention to the teachings of the ancients for the last 10,000 years that this is, in fact, the reason that in yoga you sit in lotus, because that's what you're going to look like in the future as we evolve also. So we will evolve, and we will evolve into something like this. Now, in general, I should point this out, when you have something that looks like this and it is a Fibonacci series, or they call it the nautilus, oh, looky there. The nautilus or the Fibonacci series or the golden mean or the golden ratio all looks like a nautilus shell, and it expanding somewhat like that. That's called a Julia set, right? Julia. Well, Julia sets repeat and repeat and repeat. Every time there's a flow of anything somewhat liquid, air, water, anything fluid, follow the form of a Julia set. So it starts to flow, and you'll see it as it flows. Let's see if I can make this so you can see it. It flows and it turns into these Julia sets, right? Flows, turns into Julia sets, flow. Look into the Julia sets, and what will you see? If you have enough Julia sets doing what they call tessellating or tessellation, repeating itself over and over again, eventually inside of it they will nest, they will create a Mandelbrot set. In other words, as soon as the cosmos, and by the way, this is spiral nebulas, this is what galaxies look like, this is what the galaxy we're in looks like. We're out here on the edge of one of these. There's multiple ones, of course, and they're all tessellated. And what happens when they tessellate? They accrete, they have accretion, they crystallize into a substance that is in harmony with the other planetary spheres and the sun. It's really just as simple as that. Now, we're going to get into quite a few things today, and I may start off on the science end of this because we've gone over a lot of this before, but I wanted to bring this up again because without this, folks, you're lost. Without a map of the cosmos, you're lost. Because why? The cosmos is you. You are the microcosm of the macrocosm. You are a small 3D holographic version of the cosmos. Why? Because we tessellated into this nested form. And in us, we have the 7 foci, and if we sit in lotus, pull our legs up, and go into a lotus position, we look just like the only representation that they have for the way that math works in the physical world. But this system doesn't really work yet, because the scientists will say that the Mandelbrot set is two-dimensional, and it represents space in an infinite continuum. But they cannot replicate that, or they cannot project that into a 3D form of it. If there was a 3D form of the Mandelbrot set, I believe that you would find the original monad, which is the basis of all atoms. Atoms actually move in this pattern, not this rotational orbiting pattern that they say, because it's never been seen. And it is speculation, but there is no visual proof of any of that. All of this is speculation in terms of what scientists are going to tell you about the cosmos. For instance, let me just rant and rave a bit more about what's going on in today's age. In June, they launched the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Why? Because recently China said they went to the dark side of the moon and started a big facility to grow plants, and they're just doing a marvelous job. So somehow China is able to do things that are actually superhuman and defy everything that there is that we know about the material world. And so imagine if we started a program that got to the moon. Why did we stop? Because there was one accident and a number of astronauts were killed? That's why we stopped? No. We stopped because we never got there, folks. And they're going to tell you that we did get there. And so the new thing is And why did they have to do this? Not only because China claimed to have gone to the moon and they have now practically colonized the moon. They have these facilities growing plants and they're monitoring it and they say it's just marvelous. Oh, they can do anything they want on the moon. So China says basically they own the moon now. So what would we as good American warriors do? We would send up a satellite to go and take a picture to see if it was there now, wouldn't we? Because it's on the dark side of the moon, so we can't supposedly see it with a telescope, and I'll go back to that in a moment. So we sent up an orbiter. Well, isn't it beautiful? A few days ago, the orbiter discovered the land rover and all the stuff we left in one of the Apollo missions, and they show you a little picture of it. And what is it? It's a speck. It's such a tiny, tiny speck that it could be anything, but it certainly isn't what they say it is. And it's one speck, but supposedly, remember, we left the rover, we left the launcher, the moon lander, had its base, was supposedly there, and we shot up from that. We left all kinds of garbage there, but they show you one little tiny picture from this supposed satellite, which they never mentioned to anyone they were launching in June. They just told you when it got there, and now they're sending us pictures. But remember, Stanley Kubrick filmed the first all of the lunar landings, right? We know that. We have endless hours in his multiple studios paid by the government to create the propaganda to tell the world that America got to the moon first. Why, folks? Because then we can put bombs on the moon. We can control the moon, and we can control things below the moon because we can shoot missiles. You know, it's all for military. That's what the propaganda was. It had nothing to do with research. And then you'll say, but there's moon rocks. Moon rocks fall from the moon all the time. We have thousands and thousands of what would be called meteorites or chunks of the moon that have fallen, especially in the Antarctic. In a certain place of the Antarctic, we have found endless moon rocks. That doesn't mean anything. And so then they'll say, but wait, or a common person, oh, we little people who can't do math would say, but why can't you aim the Hubble telescope at the moon and see what we left there to prove that we were there? Wouldn't that just be the simplest solution, folks? Why waste time sending up even a lunar reconnaissance orbiter or anything else? Oh no, you will have the beautiful NASA mathematical explanations of why the biggest telescope in the world that is outside of our own atmosphere and has nothing in between and could literally look at specks on the moon, anything on the moon, a little tiny, tiny speck on the moon could be found from this telescope with its power. No, they'll tell you it's not big enough. So that was the myth for a long, long time. Oh, but now they have the Webb telescope, which I'll go on about quite a bit in a minute. But basically, what they said, well, if China's up there and we're going back, we have to prove we can go up there again. So we're going to say that we launched this beautiful lunar reconnaissance orbiter. We won't tell anybody we did. We won't have any record of it. But we will certainly have these pictures. And those pictures prove nothing. In 1972, I worked on satellites that could take a picture from the thermosphere and read the serial number off of a bolt on a Russian Jeep in Russia. If we have that type of ability to see things far away, we can certainly see the big things we left on the moon. So what is really going on here? What is going on is we're going back to the moon now, aren't we? According to the theories. Now, let's remember, as soon as they said that, what happened? People said, you can't go to the moon. We don't believe it, because even scientists said you never made it to the moon. Matter of fact, go on the internet and it will say, oh, all you stubborn, lower, non-math thinking people and scientists who are so stubborn that you still don't believe we went to the moon, we're going to show you pictures of the orbiter up there right now, taking pictures of the refuse we left on the moon. Complete and absolute nonsense. Now, I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. I'm just saying there are so many incongruencies and unanswered questions, and every time I talk to a scientist, I ask him simple questions that a simple little boy from the Ozarks, a commoner, might ask because it seems horrifyingly incongruent. And what do? They get angry because they don't have answers. So now we have the Webb telescope up there. And notice, as I have said now and ranted and raved about this for the last few months, everything that the Hubble told us and everything we had as settled science for astrophysics has been flushed down the toilet as sheer nonsense, poppycock, superstition, and mythology. And now we have the truth, because we have the Webb telescope, and it is pouring in those pictures that are showing that everything we thought was wrong. We actually see gravity now, according to the Webb telescope. We have observation telescope platform, and we believe that we can now see the connective tissue between, this is fantastic. I love this one. Just recently, within the last few weeks, they now say that the view that they have, remember, I've already told you about this before, there's been 7 or 8 different views, theories about the shape of our cosmos. And the new one is most interesting because it's the one that is probably correct. It's called, it's a Hawaiian name because they came from the solar observatory there where I used to live. I used to go up that solar observatory. But anyway, it's this fancy name, Lananaya Kia or something to that effect. Basically, it just means that it is a bunch of connective tissue that connects every single supermassive black hole in a galaxy, or even galaxies in formation, have what are called ion jets or relativity jets that are visible sometimes, invisible other times. But then even after, they may go out to being 100 times longer and visibly than the entire galaxy is, 100 times longer, coming out of the supermassive black hole, or there's a cycle. These galaxies go through cycles of ion jets and supermassive black holes. Well, anyone could have known this. I think I was probably about 12 years old when I said, oh no, that's complete nonsense. What we have here is very simply the same thing we have in the human brain. About 200 billion galaxies, 200 billion nerve cells. And then what connects them? Axons. And now they know that they're tubes. They're empty nerve tubes. And this is recent discoveries of the brain, not connected to astrophysics, which would have explained this to them a long time ago. And had they actually simply listened to the ancients, they would have known what was true. When a black hole in a galaxy, in the middle of the galaxy, eats hundreds of millions of stars, where do they go? Well, it's easy. They go on those tubes to another galaxy that's in the more or less opposite formation. So if the black hole is growing, then it goes to a galaxy where it's not growing. If it is shrinking, it goes to a different galaxy where the opposite is happening. And now they know this is true. And if you stand back and look at the new form of the cosmos, which is, I say, probably one of the best, except for the dodecahedron theory, but it requires huge leaps of thinking that go beyond any of their mathematics and certainly any of their ability to imagine these things. But basically, this new picture of the cosmos looks just like the human heart with its fibers. The human heart. What have we always told you? The cosmos is the human heart. The human heart is beating at the Schumann resonance, 7.3, 7.4, 7.8, depending upon what your heart is doing. That frequency goes through all basically what we'd call the sun's heliosphere. It's permeating everything. It goes through anything. It can go straight through the earth. And it is what? The heartbeat of the universe. The heartbeat of the cosmos. That's what's in us. Now, why can't they start from the assumptions of what the ancients said were true, and then they could demonstrate it with the human body, and then they could look into the cosmos and figure some things out? They don't do that. So, first off, here's the big lie for you. You see all those pretty pictures, hundreds of thousands of pretty pictures that are closer and better resolution than anything you ever have seen from any other telescope, the Hubble included. All lies. Did you realize those are all lies? That those are computer graphic images? That they are simulations of what infrared tells us? Infrared tells us temperatures. It doesn't give us the formations that we're seeing in those pictures. Those are simply created. It's just like every time you ever saw anything going on in space, What did they show you on the news? Simulations. Okay? And when they get caught showing simulations and saying they're real, as they did with one of the recent, I think it was Elon Musk's launch into space, or one of them. Here they're showing active pictures from inside where these humans are going up into the atmosphere, and they're showing a picture of the stages dropping off. And what do you see? A little mouse running around. Completely fake. 100% fake. This is true with almost every picture you see from space. Ask the questions. How did they get the pictures of supposedly the first man walking on the moon from a camera that was set up far away, and there were no footprints that led there to set that camera up? Okay, ask a few questions like that, or ask a question about, why can't you use a telescope to see the refuse? And they're going to give you a mathematical answer that's supposed to calm your fears, because they are in control. And the scientists, the astrophysicists, are the biggest scientists. They're almost like God. The only bigger are the scientists at CERN. And the scientists in Switzerland who have spent more money on that fake collider, because it doesn't even exist. There's two other colliders there, but the one the Large Hadron Collider, it doesn't exist, folks. The statistics are all fake, but they say that they can go back to the moment of creation and find the very God particle that keeps it all together. This is the God particle right here, folks. That's the God particle, not the Higgs boson particle, not any of the new ones, not any of these doorways to 11 dimensions, none of this nonsense, none of these infinite black hole doorways or wormholes or doorways into... all nonsense to try to make the power of scientists the ultimate power. And it's just like the Pope. He's infallible. So scientists are the new religion. They're infallible. Incorrect. There's hardly anything that a scientist has ever told us that is correct for more than 100 years, and then they find that another scientist discovers that that was a big fat lie, and that the truth is this. They were observing the same things, folks. Why did they get different observations, different conclusions? Well, we know this. We know that quantum entanglement basically is the thing that is happening with the observer, creating the phenomena to change into what the observer is looking for, because the concepts of the observer limit the perception. It's very simple. We've known this since the ancient Upanishads told us. You know, those go back 8,000, 9,000 years. We've known this, folks, for 11,000 years, but the scientists don't seem to know a darn thing now, do they? And with all the things they tell us with medicine, they don't know a thing. They do not know one single thing. Why? Because they base it all on death studies, not life studies. They base it all upon mechanical constructs and narratives, not human experience. And that's what this is. A true cosmos gives you human experience that you can then relate, and it actually becomes the corresponding corollary to the cosmic dimension of your microcosmic self in the macrocosm. It's really, really simpler than they say, but they make it complicated so that they can be in charge. For instance, how many billions of dollars, I've said this so many times, have been spent on cancer research, and they have found nothing, absolutely zero. They don't know a thing. They can't give us any news. They can't give us any hope. Recently, Fauci tried to say, before all of this happened, before the pandemic happened, Fauci said, oh, we have a cure for cancer now. And then that went to sleep. The cure for cancer is back out now from the NIH. And the CDC, it allows it. They don't approve it. The FDA hasn't approved it. And what is it? Messenger RNA cancer vaccines. Okay? As if what we're seeing now doesn't prove that science is really a depopulation, eugenicist narrative. Well, pay attention. Now we're going to find that even though CDC admits that 200 million Americans were given cancer through inoculations starting in 1952, and then for about 20 years, they say that they created 200 million cases of cancer. But now we have an failed experimental viral vector being touted as a cure for cancer. No, here's the deal, folks. It's very, very simple. Cancer is created by acidosis. Many, many things create acidosis. Smoking, drinking, especially sugar. Sugar, number one thing, sugar, especially denatured sugar, denatured salt. All of these denatured fats, man-made manipulated fats, any kind of polysaturated anythings, the cell takes that in first and produces sometimes as much as 200 times the garbage in that cell as if they would have chosen not sugar, but glycose, the sugar that your body creates. But the cell 100% of the time will choose the poison first. That creates garbage, goes into the interstitial fluids, that creates acidosis, that creates cancer. Hello? I didn't have to do any research in any laboratory or use any math to figure that out. That's been known for a long, long time. How come tens and hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on research and science doesn't know any of that? Matter of fact, they would deny that. So anyway, the Webb telescope is an infrared telescope. Those aren't real pictures, but they're being sold as real pictures. And why did we get that? I'll tell you why, in my opinion. Pope Francis, who is of course infallible, came to America, didn't he? And where did he want to go? He wanted to go to the Graham binocular infrared telescope in Arizona. Why? Look it up. You used to be able to see hundreds of pictures from that telescope, infrared telescope, showing what I call plasma beings, or beings of warmth, beings that show up in an infrared telescope, coming at the Earth from a very far distance, but clusters of them coming at the Earth. In other words, according to them and according to the Pope, we will soon be visited by aliens because he can see them. Remember, he's an amateur astronomer. And he knows all about it. The Graham is his favorite telescope in the world, and he has made statements that aliens have visited us before, his words, aliens have visited us before in the past many times and will visit us again soon. And then he goes on to say, these are in articles that we've written, quoting him directly, he says that when the aliens get here, won't we be surprised to find out that in their world they have their own Jesus? That's who's leading the Catholic Church. Someone who believes that aliens who have other Jesuses on their planets are going to come and supplant us. And so therefore, I suggest that someday there will be a blue beam false flag where aliens come to visit the Pope and give the Pope some special messages. Why? Because it's the theory that your concepts produce your perception. And if the Pope believes this, that's what he's going to perceive. So when people say recently, and this is just makes me laugh so hard, recently you now have again and again headlines that say every federal agency of America acknowledges the real, tangible existence of UFOs and they have proof. That's a big fat lie. As a matter of fact, the only person who ever said he had any proof of tangible proof of alien visitations to this earth recently in the last few weeks came out and announced it was all a lie. And he created that fake metal that could bend back. That was just, that kind of metal has been around for a long time. Memory metal, it's called. And so, the evidence that there is no evidence. Are there lights in the sky? Of course there's lights in the sky, but I'm going to tell you a little story. And this one you may think that this is just a little out there, but this is the reason I can speak from absolute direct experience. Trevor Constable did the research that he went out in the high plains of the Sierras west of LA with infrared photography and an orgone box, a Reich orgone box that had been fitted with lead pipes to be a cloudbuster. And these cloudbusters have been proven to be true. They used them in Russia. They used them in Russia to push the tundra back. They used them in China to manipulate the weather so that look what's happening in China. We use them here all the time, as well as seeding everything with all the metallic nanoflakes and everything else. But the point is, I met Trevor Constable in LA. We went out and I watched him do this. And I put on infrared glasses and I saw the warmth critters. I saw the infrared visible plasma creatures that travel along electrical power lines And when they get overloaded, they literally jump off the power lines, become independent, and then multiply. So I used to have the films, and these films used to be quite available. You can see it in his book, The Awesome Life Force, where these critters multiply. They simply split into two, and those split into two, and then they run around and they act like they're little children in a playground having fun, where the heat is so great that the atmosphere is so thin that the plasma balls can do this. Well, plasma balls happen in lightning. Plasma balls have come down and blessed saints. Plasma balls have come down and killed the person right next to someone where there was, many people who witnessed this. I have seen plasma balls. I've seen them multiple times, probably 5 or 6 times. They exist. Scientists will tell you they don't exist. What are plasma balls? That's what the new Webb telescope is up there to watch for, to see if we're going to be invaded by what they presume to be UFOs that do certainly appear in infrared photography, in infrared telescopes, and in anything infrared. So these pictures you're seeing are not true. They're a lie. They're just simply science trying to reassert its authority over every other lesser person in the world who cannot do the math. But remember, Stephen Hawking wrote a book mathematically proving all these theories. Many years later, he wrote a book saying he made it all up, it wasn't true, he manipulated the math, and that anyone can manipulate the math. He's still seen as a hero. And remember, he was one of the most frequent visitors to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Because why? He was the propaganda master for astrophysics. And because he was crippled, everyone had to listen to him. We know that all his theories are completely bogus. Why would we be listening to him? Because we listen to anybody who says they have the math to prove it. Well, here's the math, folks. The solar system does not move the way that they say. Now, you've seen recently on the internet, and I pointed it out, that there's this model, and it's a not a model, it's computer analysis of observations of 5 different types of telescopes that we use. And what did they end up saying? They ended up saying, well, what we know now, and this should have been derived, Rudolf Steiner said it back he said it in his astronomy course, I think around in the 1920s. But he said the center of mass is not on the sun in our solar system. It's in a dynamic relationship between the sun, the 3 inner planets, and the 3 outer planets. And he says that they do not move in a circle. And by the way, I loved it today. I found at least 10 places where they said the vortex theory of the movement is wrong. Vortex. Is that how you spell it? The vortex theory of the sun is here, and it's moving this way. And I'll talk about the speed of that in a minute, but the sun's there, and then the planets are following behind. But the way that it shows it is it kind of shows that it looks like this, with the inner and the outer planets. What is that? That's the shape of the DNA. But because the guy came up and he said it was a vortex, when this first came out, everyone said it was the truth because a computer had generated it. And it generated from all the data that we had, and so it has to be correct. Now, because some bimbo came out and said it's a vortex and the sun is pulling these planets behind them, they've discredited the whole thing, and now they threw that, the scientists, the only thing you're going to find on the internet is the scientists saying this is horrifyingly incorrect. No, it's not. Here's the reality. It's not a vortex. Heck no, it ain't no vortex. A vortex, it would be falling into it. It's not that at all. It's what Rudolf Steiner said. 1 planet, 2 planet, 3 planet, and then on the outside, that's the inside, and then 1 planet, 2 planet, 3 planet, and they have chords. Each of them has a separate chord. And this is well known now, but when was it discovered? Recently. I was harping on this some years ago, and now it's become the ultimate of science, for a science with the sun, that the sun has magnetic cords to each of the planets and pulls the planets behind it. That's a fact. How do we know that? Because we just spent billions of dollars launching these satellites to look at what are called magnetic flux doorways or magnetic flux points. And for us here on the Earth, there's these little bright doorways that open up every once in a while. And when they do, instantaneously, over 93 million miles, bingo, the rope is back and it tugs on the Earth and pulls it after the sun. Amazing. This is a fact. Not only that, as it comes into the Earth, this cord, and the cord actually it is wound by four, I know this is a terrible drawing, but when you finally get it, it's four winding cords, ropes, around one center. Just like DNA. What a coincidence. And it comes in at the top of the Earth, right? And what happens, they now know? It follows the rotation of the Earth, and here, at the moment that the sun rises, massive cords, magnetic cords, hollow tunnels, as it were, start to roll across the Earth in patterns of every 20 minutes. And after 5, these patterns stop and they repeat. These are the 5 ethers. We've told you all about this years and years ago. Now they have proof that this is true. And that they're collapsing, by the way, because the geomagnetism of the Earth is depleting right now because of the solar cycle we're in. These are depleting, and they're actually sometimes collapsing to the ground. These are not Van Allen belts, okay? Totally different. These are rotating, roiling, sounding ethers. The Akasha comes first, and then the warmth, light, sound, and life ether, rolling tubes go across the Earth, and that's what actually keeps us alive. Does science know or understand any of that? They discover these things because they can now measure magnetism, right? So they can see these things, and they actually exist on other planets. They can see these cords going to the other planets with their ability to look at magnetism. Soon they'll have the ability to look at gravity because they've just discovered that gravity shoots out of ion jets. They can see it. And of course it defies gravity. Of course it's levity. And of course there's an electrogravitational force that creates supermassive black holes. One would be very naive to think otherwise. And Einstein is correct. But remember, Einstein said the entire cosmos is floating in a fluid called the luminiferous ether, the light ether. So if you think I'm talking nonsense, no, I'm talking what Steiner taught, which is now found out to be true, and it goes on into the future, so I can sit here and predict all kinds of things based upon Steiner's astronomy course, and on his warmth course, and his light course. Very simple to predict these things, because so far, Steiner hasn't been incorrect. And so it's great to have, and what's he doing? He's taking the wisdom through his clairvoyance and through all that he's understood in all of his incarnations, and he's bringing it forward, taking the ancient wisdom, turning it into modern wisdom, and giving us what we need. But he can't give us too much, because why? Scientists will turn it into weapons. So a lot of this stuff I've known for a long, long time, and have researched it to demonstrate what Steiner said we were supposed to do. Take anthroposophy and make it relevant to the wisdom that is happening in the modern world right now. And if you can't do that, what use is it? So it's so easy to predict some of these things, it's ridiculous. So in fact, I can brag, because I'm one of the biggest mouthed anthroposophists in the world, that yes, I have predicted all these things and I've been right. I wasn't right. I was simply telling you the truth that has been known for a long time, that scientists obfuscate. They hide so they can have power and control. Here is the way Rudolf Steiner said it really is. The sun is here, moving. We now know, first off, it's moving about 500,000 miles an hour. Okay. And then the Earth is moving about 67,000 miles an hour. Oh, wow. And then our galaxy, just our local area of the galaxy, is moving at, oh boy, I don't know if I can do the numbers this big. Oh, that's 67,000. Okay, so we got to go 0, 0, 0, comma 0, 0, 0. No, that would actually be 3. Well, 1, no, and this is actually a 3. 1.3 million miles an hour. And did I not predict this? No, I predicted that Steiner had said this. Steiner also said where the galactic center is, where the supergalactic center is, that light is moving in a continuum, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. I'm going to draw the picture here so I do not ignore this or miss it. The heliosphere. This one just makes me laugh so hard that you'd think I had bronchitis. Okay, so the sun is here. Well, what are the planets doing? Are they moving? Oh, by the way, when they debunked the vortex theory, which was a computer-generated image, which showed supposedly the real motions of the sun and the planets, when they said, oh no, there's no vortex, therefore it's throughout the whole theory, what did they use to show the theory? Here's the sun, folks. I'm going to teach it to you again. And here's the planets going around in pretty little circles. The sun, that is not the way it happens. That is complete nonsense. First off, they admit that it's not a circle, it's an ellipse. And secondly, there's perturbations that they can't understand. What are these? What are these variances that they can't understand? It's called degenerative Cassini curves. Let's see if I can draw a picture of this. You start off with an ellipse, it starts to bend, bends more, and then eventually turns into a lemniscate. It's all the same math. So if you can prove that the planet moves around the sun in an ellipse, you can mathematically demonstrate that it moves in a lemniscate. It's the math, folks. Gaussian geometry, degenerative Cassini curves, and etheric geometry, all kinds of other types of mathematical geometries demonstrate that this is the same equivalency in math. Because when you're using numbers, you're using one of the most limited abstract systems there is to demonstrate whatever it is you want to demonstrate. So the sun's here, and the inner 3 planets, let's see if I can draw this, move in a lemniscate. And because they're moving in a lemniscate, it appears as if they're moving in an ellipse. And the outer 3 planets are moving in a bigger lemniscate. And it's very hard to draw. Let's see if I can do any justice to this. No, I can't. Okay, they're out here. Now, why do I only say there's 3? Because there's Earth, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. So in fact, when they come, they look as they're being pulled behind on these cords. And so what it appears to be is they're all moving in the same type of plane, and that they always keep the same distance. So you think, but if they come to the cross point, then it wouldn't be the same distance. Do the math. It's no, that's not right. If it's particularly if it's here and here and here, it will all appear as if it is on a plane of an ellipse. So this is the true motion. So Rudolf Steiner called it adjacent lemniscatal movement, where the outside lemniscate in one of its orbits holds the lemniscate of the 3 inner planets. Now, just recently, today when I looked at it again to make sure, and what did they show? They showed this pathetic system here, and they showed that it isn't a vortex, but then they showed that the movement of the planets is more like this. So they literally took the movements that are in this vortex theory, it was never called a vortex theory. It was a mathematical generated cosmological narrative of how it really moves. The man who added the word vortex messed up the whole thing, so therefore they discredit the whole thing. But if you study it, that's what you'll come to. That you can prove that even the most basic statement that a scientist makes about our cosmos, our solar system, is horrifyingly incorrect. For instance, the heliosphere, recently discovered. There's our sun. And here we have these planets, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, in any pattern that they want, but they're being pulled, and it's almost like a comet. But about 11 billion miles this direction, they recently, with Voyager 1 and 2, found that they entered into a boundary, a barrier, that is 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, you heard me right. 10,000 degrees, 7,000 K, 10,000 Fahrenheit. And how can that be? How can the surface of the sun be a temperature that 11 billion miles away is the same temperature in the enclosure, this, they call it a sphere, it's not a sphere. What is that? That's a continuum. Rudolf Steiner said that light in a continuum can move at infinite speeds, not limited by what we call the frontal motion of light, or just the speed of light. Complete nonsense. The speed of light is completely variant. This has been proven recently by speeding up light 100 times faster than the speed of light in a laser. So how is it? Now, if this is Saturn, we know that the magnetosphere of the sun goes out to Saturn, turns around and comes back, right? So the magnetosphere, the warmth and the light of the sun goes out, but when it reaches Saturn, the magnetic component of it stops, turns around, and comes back to the sun. So you see, the warmth, light, sound, life. Life is gravity, magnetism is sound. So the sound of the sun goes out and comes back and is in this limited continuum. Well, where does the light go? Excuse me, let's say, where does the warmth go? Well, beyond this heliosphere is nothing but cold, dead space, and what they call, if you go out very, 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 very far, nothing has ever come out of here. Two things that we know of have supposedly come out of interstellar space to the Earth. That's it. So has anything ever gone out? Well, our Voyager 1 and 2 got there. They turned off. They didn't function. And now they say they are functioning. They went through 10,000 degree heliosphere, supposedly, and went into cold, dead space, and now are sending, both of them, pictures back to us. But they're sending pictures of nothing because there's nothing there. Okay, if you want to believe that, go ahead. And I'm pretty sure that Santa Claus is riding on one of those. And I think a unicorn is riding on the other one. So when you get to this, what are you seeing here? Come on now, fifth grader could tell me this. What is it? It's a mirror. Is it not a mirror? It captures the light of the sun from the warmth of the sun from 11 billion miles away, and it's the same temperature? What's causing it to heat up? A mirror. Okay, we have our little Earth. What is it that keeps us from being burnt alive by ultraviolet and gamma waves and all the other ones, rays that are all above that? One thing. Anybody know? No, we don't know. You know why we don't know? Science doesn't teach us this because Elon Musk has just poked thousands of holes in it and caused more ultraviolet waves to come in, which causes mutations in human beings and illnesses and viruses and plagues. Okay? We have now poked, I don't know, last count, about 10,000 holes into the ozone as we put satellites up here above the ozone. The ozone is a mirror, and it mirrors back away from the Earth the rays that would kill us. That's quite a nice plan they made for us, huh? Whoever created these ideas is really, that is some kind of intelligence. But anyway, you got a mirror around the Earth, and Earth is usually marked this way. So you got an ozone here, and then you have the stratosphere here. Well, guess what? Up here in the thermosphere, how hot do you think it gets? It gets about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But they'll say because there's no density there, nothing will receive this heat because there's no density there. And then they explain all this stuff about gas and so on and so on. Well, that's complete nonsense. Google it yourself. What is the temperature on the outside of the International Space Station? It varies by hundreds of degrees whether the sun is shining on it or not. If it's shining on it, it's hundreds of degrees hotter. right? Yes, folks, it is a lie that because there's no atmosphere out there. So if there's no atmosphere out there, then it's really less dense than the atmosphere of the thermosphere, right? The density of the thermosphere, which supposedly can't heat up our satellites and burn them up because the scientists tell us mathematically that just can't happen. So it just doesn't happen because anything they tell you through math must be true. So what do we really have here? The biggest myths going on the face of the earth are settled science. And that's what makes me so upset that they are leading us straight into the subnatural realms, to the devil. Who's coming up with these theories? Demons, who are possessing the minds of people who are luciferically inspired or ahrimanically controlled. And I've been speaking about this quite a bit lately, and that's why this cosmology is so important. If you know where this is coming from, then you can pick it to pieces, see that any truth that might be there, take an observation for what the observation may give you, but do not take the conclusion. Do not take the concept. And keep your mind open to Goetheanistic phenomenological observation so that you can be that person who sees it for what it is, because that's all real innovations in science come from, is the one person who looked at it a different way. And now if you look at it this way, you go, but wait, okay, so I can start to figure more things out. If there's warmth, light, sound, and life, and we know that this is the light, this is the warmth, where's the light? Where's the sound? We know this is the sound, this is the magnetic ether, and where's the life, where's the gravity? You follow this pattern, and one could easily do experiments to show, and Steiner gave us the experiments to do in his light course, to show that all of this is more than true. It's the way things work, and it's very simple. And it is, in fact, a nested tessellation of the macrocosm in our solar system. This is the whole solar system. Some people would go so far as to say, I will not say that, but some do say it. When we look out from the earth, any rules we used on the earth are not, Steiner said this, any science we use on the earth, natural science, is not applicable as we look into space. It's two different things. You're trying to compare apples to oranges. It doesn't work. The math doesn't work, nothing works. So as you're looking out there, what are you actually seeing? Some would say you're looking in a mirror and you're seeing yourself. I would say that the human body is the temple of the divine, is in fact a mirror image of that cosmos. And if that's the case, then this entire cosmological system of the celestial hierarchies, the way that it manifests in beings, and these are the ones below, so these are the celestial, this is us, and these are the lower beings that unfortunately we have come to take over. And then this is how it manifests in the kingdoms of nature. And then this is how it manifests in terms of the human being and the soul, and where you find this with the human being. And it's really absolute clear proof to me that the Trinity exists. And the Trinity, let's see, didn't I write it up here? Anyway, you say I put the Trinity up here. But this is one, this is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So the threefold nature of the human being is clearly imprinted in us, because we have thinking, feeling, and willing. Thinking, feeling, and willing. We're conscious here. We're in our dreaming state here. We're in a trance state in our will. But in our will are all the secrets I'm talking about. All these secrets, every one of them, are in the human will, human willpower. And we don't need to look out into space. We don't need to send tin cans trying to get beyond the heliosphere to look at nothing and then try to convince us that they can still perceive past that realm into interstellar space. That's really pretty funny. And then I'll add one more thing. Oh, this is another one I love. I just love science. This is an ability to come up with anything real, but a great ability to hallucinate. And one of the great hallucinations, this is a big hallucination, and I love this one, because it goes so far out there that this scientist somehow was able to go beyond that heliosphere and go out into what is called the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is 250,000 times further out there than the heliosphere. And once you get out into the Oort cloud, there's these magical things called planetesimals. In planetesimals, there's no evidence they exist, but the scientists are certain that comets come from this place where there's nothing. They congeal ice rocks. Comets are supposedly almost all ice, some rock, cold. And from empty space, it crosses a 10,000 degree barrier, the heliosphere, and comes at a huge distance, by the way, beyond astronomical distances, out of nowhere, and then it comes across the heliosphere without melting, and then literally accretes. Through accretion, it crystallizes, and somehow has this magical force that can send it faster than practically anything that we know of, zooming around our solar system out from the furthest, way further than 11 billion miles, comes in, zooms around the sun, and doesn't melt. And its tail is so powerful that even when it gets near the sun, it pushes the tail in the direction of the radiance of the sun. And it doesn't melt. Some of them go into the sun, some don't. Some come back on periodic cycles, and they don't melt, and the rock doesn't burn up, and they don't diminish. And then they go back to where they came from and then disappear again. So in other words, the Oort cloud and Mr. Oort said that matter appears out of nowhere, accretes, goes back to nowhere, disappears, and can't really be influenced even by the heat of the sun, the gravity of the sun. Remember, it overcomes the gravity of the sun. So gravity, whatever they think it is not the way that they define it. It can't be. All thermodynamics is completely destroyed by considering a single comet. So what is a comet? A comet is an example of what a human being is. They come out of nothing, they come down, they incarnate. They are of the sun, but they aren't overwhelmed by the sun. They practically take their life from the sun, and then they go back into this realm and disappear again. That is a human being. So, if you have this in your mind as part of your spiritual cosmology, then you can't be fooled by this nonsense. As a matter of fact, all you do is spend a lot of time laughing about it. Because ask a scientist where we come from. Well, we come from an egg and a sperm. And where do we go? We don't go anywhere. We go into the cold, dead grave. Now, please leave me alone. I have more science to conquer the world, and I'm going to make a bomb out of this, so please get out of my way. That is what it's like talking to a scientist, and astrophysicists are the worst. Matter of fact, they will kill you. They will get so angry at you if you try to point any of these things out, because it would, like someone who's been given a bad drug, you tell them afterwards, do you think they're going to believe you? Not until they have the effects, and always negative effects. So, we had talked before about the cosmos, but we called it cosmogenesis. And as I said before, anthropogenesis must be there too. But in this case, the anthropogenesis, I'm going to describe here a little bit of how it appears in the human being. So if we're going to do this, we need to kind of have in our mind what was talked about in the Akashic presentation on heterochrony. These manifestations of these beings, they're always evolving and going up. We're going to evolve. We're humans. We're going to evolve into angels in a while, not tomorrow. Some have already evolved into angels, and they've gone into a transcendental world where they can still have effects upon human beings. Well, if you believe that, then basically you don't believe science, because science would just laugh you out of the room, even though you could then say to the scientist, well, then can you explain to me why all of the art, why all of the architecture, why all of the philosophy, at least 75, 85% of everything ever written before 100 years ago was all focused on God, the divine, and our place in relationship to that harmonic, symbiotic relationship? Why is it? Because we don't have a cosmology, and they did. Our cosmology believes in heterochrony because these things were laid down at different times. And as they evolve, they go through different characteristics. And we will also. Heterochrony. So this system here, what we call the system of the celestial hierarchies, best explained for us in modern times by Johannes Trithemius, who was in the 1400s into the 1500s, in his book De Septem Secundis, which is where you get the 360-year cycles of the archangels as they rotate through, or the larger cycles. He actually relates these cycles to the archangels particularly. And then Dionysius the Areopagite wrote a book called The Divine Names, which at the time that it was translated for Charlemagne was considered the Holy Grail of Europe. Why? Because it described the very beings that we relate to and how that relates to Christ and the Trinity. And so that book was considered to be literally the Holy Grail of its time. And it too describes each of these. This is called, there's another one, The Divine Names of the Celestial Hierarchies. Describes each of these and what they do. So Trithemius and Dionysius would state that the seraphim are the highest, and they are beings of love. We've gone over this before. The cherubim are beings of harmony. Well, what is cosmos? Harmony. And what is it that causes everything to be in beautiful harmony? Love. It's as simple as that. Love is the cosmos. Love is intelligent design because it's harmonious. The willpower, that is of this highest rank, which is the Father. It's oftentimes called the Father being, or we call it the Mother being, or sometimes it has to be called the Mothers, because as they create, the Mothers create the first, second, and third elementary kingdoms down here through heterochrony. So now they are below us, and these other beings, I'll talk about that in a minute, create the mineral, plant, animal. Oh, look at that. No, because it goes down backwards. Yes, sorry. So these other realms, mineral, plant, animal realms, are created with group souls from the highest hierarchy. As a matter of fact, the thrones are the group soul of the minerals. So in fact, minerals are way smarter than us, but they're locked in time. They have way more wisdom than us, but they can't express it. Rudolf Steiner says if you take a clear quartz crystal and you meditate on it, what you will find is that inside of this quartz crystal is a hollow space, just like the hollow space of your nerves, where spirit comes to reside. In other words, you're looking at a God. You're looking at the manifestation of the group soul of a God. Who is that God? The thrones. Without the thrones, and what's a throne? That's what you sit on. That's what you stand on. Without the minerals, we would have nothing to stand on. And if they didn't hold their position for all this time, we would have no existence. Our ego couldn't come to birth. So right here, folks, if the scientists would understand what a quartz crystal, the most common substance on the surface of the earth, they haven't a clue about. Oh, but they'll tell you that it's silica and silica dioxide plates that cause their satellites to be able to go through 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, right. Okay, so the reality is contact the minerals which were donated in the incarnations of the earth. I like to use that term instead of globes or any other term, because it's Steiner's term. So if we talk about the incarnations of the earth, we know that this is ancient Saturn, ancient sun, ancient moon. This is us here, the earth. That's where we are. But there's future ones. This is Jupiter, Venus, and Vulcan. So as we're looking at this, in the ancient Saturn time, minerals were created. In the ancient sun time, plants were created. In the ancient moon time, animals were created. In the earth, humans, I guess I should say humans, were created. And what happens to humans? In the next incarnation of the earth, they become angels, archangels, and archai, right? Well, now, if that's the case, then you're going to shape up your behavior, aren't you? Aren't you going to try to evolve into this instead of devolving downward into the animal, plant, mineral kingdom, into the lower elementary kingdoms? I think that that's what any sensible person would do, and certainly anyone who had any morality or any sense of harmony or love. So that's the Father. This is the Son. Oh, by the way, the Father, Heavenly Sophia, we call her. That's another name for that grouping here. This grouping is called the Son. It's called the Christ works particularly through the Elohim, but he also works through all three of these ranks, the Caryatides, Dynamis, and the Elohim. So we call it the Son, or if you believe in the Divine Sophia, we call that the Daughter and the Divine Sophia. And then these we know a little bit more because they appear more in the Bible and we hear references to them much more often. By the way, Caryatides are beings of wisdom. That's why the word Sophia is the word wisdom. Dynamus are beings of motion. They control the motion of all the planets working harmoniously. The Elohim control the form of those planets, which is another thing I should explain that Rudolf Steiner said. Light goes out, stops, light comes back. As they meet, dark light and radiant light create a sphere. That's why planets are in the form of a sphere. So the form of the planets and the form of the human being are created by the Elohim. And then archai are the time spirits, archangels are folk spirits, angels are guardian angels, as we know, and then the human kingdom would be called the 10th hierarchy. But we have thinking, feeling, and willing, and all these kingdoms here in us, working in us, so we have the whole ball of wax. So if we look over at ourselves, we can see that in the soul, cosmology makes it that since we're just little kindergartners in the sandbox, we have thinking that is waking up now. It appears in your astral body and works through your nerves. In our feelings, most people think they're quite awake in their feelings, but you're in fact dreaming in your feelings, and you are working in the etheric realm when you're working with lively feelings, and this is the realm of rhythm. So in a human being, what you do on a regular basis rhythmically is who you are. That's what creates your feelings. That creates your mood of morality, of reverence, awe, devotion, and your pursuit of virtues. All comes from the etheric realm through the rhythms that you have in your life, including your sleeping and waking rhythms, all the rhythms, your eating rhythms, your rhythms of thought. If you just sat quietly and listened to the rhythm of thought, that alone would inform you more than science would. But in your will, we don't understand our willpower at all. The hierarchy, this hierarchy takes care of our willpower. But if we start to take over for our kidneys, and the hierarchies working from Venus, working through our kidneys, we can develop the human conscience, a moral capacity of consciousness that is evolved beyond the realm of an animal human and going into the realm of an angelic type of human. So if we can control our will, we can control our feelings, and we can control our thinking, and we get those to harmonize, again, like a lemniscate, like the motion of all the planets, we can then become the true macrocosmic reflection. And that is what we're trying to do. We're simply trying to say to all of these beings, we know that you're in us, we know that you evolve, you are not a religion per se, but in fact, without a cosmology, a religion doesn't have anything to stand on. So, yes, religions need a cosmology, and this is a cosmology of a Christian religion, but it can be used in any religion, under any circumstances, by going over to look at the way that it manifests in the human being. And so, that's what I wanted to talk about today, is make sure that we understand that without cosmology, you really don't have anything. You don't know where you came from, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. And if you have a cosmology that works, then it needs to work in your human body, in your capacities of your soul, in that which you're developing out of the three natures of your spirit. And being thankful for the gifts, the heterochronic gifts of this hierarchy that have created these elemental realms, and then give us the capacity to develop what is called spirit self, life spirit, spirit human, the three spiritual aspects of yourself. And that's in the future. And that's the beauty of what Rudolf Steiner gave us. It isn't just out of the past. It's not a repackaging of the ancient wisdom. It is applicable for today, and it is predictive of tomorrow.